So first of all, the Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, I heard all day yesterday whether one handled it correct or one handled it right, one handled it wrong. I don't know that either one handled it right or wrong or indifferent. That's kind of because we're not on the inside. We don't know what's being said to the players. We don't know what's being said back to the coaches. We don't know how they're interacting. So I'm not going to be able to critique which way one handled it versus the other in terms of right or wrong. I can give my opinion on what I think or what I like. Now, I'm going to tell you, if what Dabo Swinney is saying he did, I like the way he did it. Dabo Swinney had a guy who last year recruited a number one quarterback in Hunter Johnson. Kelly Bryant beat that guy out. He had never started. He had never played. And he had no film, no tape other than some backup duty, but he beat out Hunter Johnson. He comes back after losing to Alabama, and he's in another quarterback battle. Well, Hunter Johnson and the other kid, Cooper, both gone. They're both gone out of the program. So now there's a battle between these two. And if you've listened, Dabo has been saying he's going to let both of these guys play it out. There's going to be a competition. So he's never denied that. If what he said is true, then he told him where he was going into. He said, you're slightly ahead going into the season. But when the fourth game came, James, he sat down with this young man because guess what? Dabo Swinney could have taken this week, played Kelly Bryant, and then started Trevor Lawrence the next game. And now Kelly Bryant has no options. And so I do like that aspect of it. Then when you look to Nick Saban, Coach Saban, I think, avoided making this same decision last year. Any and everybody that went to practice from Herb Street to the average fan said that when they went to practice, Tua Tagovailoa was clearly the best quarterback. Right? Now, Clemson is a year behind where Alabama is. Everybody keep trying to compare this situation. No, last year was when Alabama was in this situation. And Nick Saban did not pull a previous starter. He left him in there in the season played out. And then what happened in the national championship game, we all know, of course, 2nd and 26, national championship. Then we come into the spring. Nick Saban was faced with the opportunity to once again pull the trigger, but guess what happened? Boom, injury to Tua Tagovailoa, so you don't have to make a decision in the spring. Then all summer, we were told that it was close. Now, was it close? We were told it was close, and so we've been watching this, and then we get to see Jalen and Tua, and I don't know if there's any quarterback that would be close to Tua in a quarterback race. So it couldn't have been as close as we were being told. That means it wasn't a competition, but it couldn't have been as close as we were made to believe by Coach Saban. Now, once Tua started, the question flipped from who's going to start to whether Jalen was going to transfer. And now Jalen is now going into his 5th game. But once again, Nick Saban, who doesn't tell the media everything, is not as open as Coach Dabo. Both of these guys handled it through their personalities. And that's all you can ask for. Now, yesterday's press conference gave another insight. Everybody's giving Dabo credit for giving the young man, telling the young man in red shirt, and dogging Kelly Bryant for leaving, and saying Saban could have handled it different, and he could have been forced to handle it different if Tua doesn't get hurt. But the reality of it is it more about how Jalen handled it versus Kelly Bryant, Dabo, or Saban? Is Jalen the one that maybe deserves more credit because of what he did? Or is it that Jalen's in a different situation than Kelly Bryant? Think about this, James. Kelly Bryant finds out that news. He comes back and plays the rest of the year. His college career is over, right? Jalen comes back and plays another year. he still has another year of eligibility and a red shirt year. See that? You see the difference? Kelly Bryant's career is over if he plays. Over. If he plays one more play at Clemson, his career is over, James. Jalen Hurts plays the rest of this year, he still has 2 years to get in one. That's a huge advantage in making a decision whether or not you stay with your team. And then I've heard people say, well, he's quitting on his team. Now, I agree. If he transfers right now, if he takes a red shirt and stays, that's different. That's different because he's staying with his team. He's doing what he can. He's just not going to play. They've chosen the starter. He's not it. He redshirts. If he leaves right now, James, even though he's going to get redshirted, that's no different than what I dogged Blake Barnett about. That's quitting on your team. Taking a red shirt and waiting out so that you can have one more year of eligibility to go somewhere else, I have zero problem with that. So does that make sense, James? The difference in just up and quitting and transferring versus saying, you know what, coach, thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for redshirting me. Thank you for letting me finish out my season here with a red shirt, but I'm going to transfer at the end of the year. That's one thing. To not come back to practice, to not finish out under the red shirt, because what's the advantage of leaving right now? What I don't know. There may be, I don't know that. But to me, that's leaving your team. Taking a red shirt is not leaving your team. Here's one other thing that I'm so sick and tired of hearing all of the proponents and the people out there speaking. Guys, not every college football player makes their decisions whether they're going to go into the pros. I heard one guy going, man, he's not good enough to be in the NFL. He should just stay and finish out. Well, what if this is this kid's last year to ever play football because all of y'all who are right say he can't play in the pros? So why would he want to spend his last year on a team if he knows that he's never going to play football again? What if he's resigned to the fact that I'm not good enough to play in the NFL? So if I stay here and play one more play for Clemson, I lose an entire year of eligibility. But I could transfer at the end of the year, go somewhere, play my last year as a football player because I'm not going to play in the NFL. See, when I hear that, I'm like, not everybody makes their decisions on whether or not they're going to go to the pros. See, I can personally relate to that, James. Coming back, I graduated a year early and almost didn't come back to play football because I didn't think I had a chance to play in the NFL. I had graduated, I was married, I had a child, and I almost walked away on the 92 team before at the end of my junior year. My wife and I had that conversation. I was like, man, that could be my last year. I haven't played enough, probably not good enough to make it to the NFL. What do I want to do? Do I want to go back through this or do I want to go ahead and start the next phase of my life? Well, I ended up making the decision to come back and play at Alabama. Ended up having a great year. We won a national championship, so on and so forth. So I was really excited that I'm glad I made that decision in hindsight. But it was not, my decision to come back was not about the NFL. It was about playing. I said, man, I got one more year. Let me make it the best year of football I've had. So what if that's what Kelly Bryant, what do I do there? And so when I look at the Kelly Bryant situation, I go, I understand the kid wanting to transfer. I don't like it if he doesn't finish out the redshirt year and transfer at the end of the year. That's walking away on your team. That's my thoughts, my opinion. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk and dog the redshirt rule. The problem isn't the redshirt rule. The problem is at the exact same time they implemented the redshirt rule, they implemented the you can jump ship rule by notifying your coach versus the coaches releasing you. If the coaches had to release you, then he would just have to wait out to the end of the year, and then Dabo would release him. But the fact that you can just walk into your coach's office and say, hey, I'm going to transfer. They put you in a database. That starts in October, if I'm not mistaken. Boom, they start that database. That's what's causing these guys to transfer so quick. Everybody has wanted to transfer. I wanted to leave Alabama numerous times. It was hard. It was tough. There was time I played more as a freshman than I did as a junior. There was times I wanted to leave. But I didn't want to go sit down and have that conversation with Coach Stallings. And because I didn't have that conversation with Coach Stallings, it got better. The next day was different. And then I was able to maintain it and stay. So I think it's the combination of the redshirt rule. I think the redshirt rule is great for college football for several reasons. Number one, James, in every other sport, there's some type of preseason or initial games that you can play. Like even basketball, they're going to have some exhibition games. In college, in the pros, they have preseason. They have all of that. And so you bring a kid from high school to college, or you have kids, you don't know how much they've grown from one year to the next. And so the 4 years and the 4 games is a good rule. I just think that there needs to be some potential stipulations around it, James. I'm okay with even if they say, hey, you can use those in the first 2 years. 2 of your first 3 years, you get those 4 games. I'm okay with that. Something that lets the young players have an opportunity to play without losing eligibility. A lot of times, by the time you're a senior, you are what you are, and then you can make a decision from there. Kelly Bryant, I have no problem with him wanting to leave because this could potentially be the last year he gets to play. If he uses it up at Clemson, his football career is over, and he finishes his eligibility. Jalen, on the other hand, if he plays this year, he still has 2 years to get in one more. He still has a redshirt year, so he could technically graduate, transfer somewhere, spend a year because they have a starter where he wants to go, and learn their system, and then play his senior year, or he could go somewhere and compete and see what happens. But I will give Coach Saban credit for what he had to say and giving Jalen credit. What I want to do, James, I know we played that comments, but I want to come back from the break and play that one more time, and I want the listeners to listen to the following. Nick Saban has been saying, hey, we're going to play both. We're going to play both. Has he elaborated any on that, James? Have you heard him? He's always just said, we're going to play both. Let's listen to what he says when he talks about playing time for Jalen moving forward. We'll hear that coming back on the other side. And I'm not knocking Coach Saban in what he's saying. I'm just saying now that those 4 redshirt games are over, it sounds like there's been a deeper conversation with Jalen. And for the fans who have been wondering, would this go on all year, I think Coach Saban tells us how he plans to manage Jalen and Tua moving forward. And we'll have that conversation right here on the Blitz. Think back to how Nick Saban has described the quarterback situation. He said it's been close. We didn't feel that after we saw the first game. We didn't feel like that there really was a close competition. Doesn't mean there wasn't a competition, but from what you saw, you would have to assume that Tua wasn't slightly ahead. However, for the first 3 games, you weren't quite sure, James, if Nick Saban was going to do what he said. He said, I'm going to play both of them. And that's how he would kind of say it. I'm going to play both of them. Then going into the Texas A&M game, going into the Ole Miss game. Going into the Ole Miss game, he told Holly Rowe that he'll have to see how it plays out. But it played out the same way it did the first 2 games. So he just played him. He played him again. He came in the second quarter and did it. And a lot of people were calling this shows and other shows saying, hey, we need to see Tua play more so he can get rhythm, so he can be more adept at leading his whole team. and that they can get, and some even call for stats, but most people were calling because they wanted to see Tua, get more playing time, develop chemistry with his team. But Saban was playing Jalen, and he did it again in Ole Miss game. Then he comes out on Chris Lowe's show, and he makes it sound like, hey, what you've seen the first 3 games is going to be what you're going to see the rest of the year. Well, we didn't see that in the Clemson game. Jalen came in not as a 2-quarterback system that you could have wondered if that was really the case, which I don't think it was. I think we were just so far ahead those first 3 games that it came across, and they played Jalen early. Well, in the Texas A&M game, Tua played deep into the third quarter, virtually the entire third quarter. Jalen took over fourth quarter. Now listen to what Nick Saban's saying. Now he's qualifying how he's going to use Jalen versus just saying he's going to use both of them. Here's Coach Nick Saban talking about Jalen Hurts, his character, and how he's handled this situation, but also listen for how he says he's going to use him.
Well, I think Jalen has been very, very professional about, the way he's sort of handled the situation he's in. I've said it's a unique situation. Nobody's ever been in this situation before. Won 26 games here, and now all of a sudden somebody else is playing. But what he has done is he's worked every day to try to get better. He's focusing on improving and, the value that he can get from this season, because we're going to play him as much as we possibly can. He deserves to play. He's a good player. And, there may be a time in the future where, he becomes the guy if something happens. So we're not hoping for that narrative, certainly, but I think it speaks volumes of his character to stick with his teammates, be a part of his team, finish the season. And I've always said how much respect I have for both the guys. But Jalen has, and how you handle things when you're in a difficult situation, I think speaks volumes of who you are. The one thing we're all going to have in life is we're going to have a lot of problems. Life is difficult. How you handle the problems is the one thing that you can control. And I think that this is certainly an obstacle that will help him be more successful in the future, and the way he's handled it is certainly going to help him handle issues and problems that we all have in our lives in the future.
And first of all, let me make sure, for those of you who think I'm making this about Jalen and playing time, I want to make sure that you understand. The point I'm pointing out is Nick Saban has managed this a certain way up until this point. Now the red shirt is off the table. It's either red shirt this week or not, okay? And Nick Saban, with the way he's handled this, he and Jalen undoubtedly have been having a lot of conversations since the season started. And instead of saying what he's been saying, and I respect him for now coming out and saying what's going to happen. It's what most people thought should happen. It's what most people believe was going to happen, that Tua Tagovailoa was clearly the starter. And as we got more into the meat of the schedule, or we got situations where the game was tight, that there would be no substitution by Jalen. Now, the next 4 weeks, James, could look exactly like the first 3 games. We could blow out these opponents and Jalen play, and it'll look like it's a 2-quarterback system. But if you listen to what Nick Saban says, guys, for those of you who are worried, this is clearly Tua's team. Tua is clearly the starter. And Jalen, according to Nick Saban, has accepted his role, because Nick Saban said this: we're going to play him as much as we can. As much as we can, meaning that Jalen is going to be the backup. And it doesn't mean that they've done away with the potential of potentially having some type of package, but I didn't get that from that conversation. I got that if we're ahead, if we're winning, that's where we're going to play him. And this is Coach Nick Saban's team, and that's fine. I'm just glad he's saying it, because now Jalen knows where he stands. The other part is he said Jalen may become the man somewhere down the road. And, of course, he's talking about if Tua were to get hurt or injured or anything like that. So that is, to me, a change in what he's saying. But that's okay. That's where we are in this season, and that's the way coaches are going to have to learn to manage this situation, James. This is new for coaches. Alabama and Clemson are just the first two, I think, that's having to deal with it on a large stage, on a national stage. But I think it's coming. I think it's coming more and more. And Kirby Smart may be in the same situation over in Georgia in a year. With Fromm, he may be in the same situation. So don't be surprised if you see this popping up more and more. And how coaches handle it will determine whether guys stay. It looks like Saban knew his player and worked with his player, and now he has a backup quarterback that can play and win at a high level. Dabo handled the way he thought, but this young man was, and I don't have a problem with the way he handled it. But when you look at it, Kelly Bryant, I don't know that it's necessarily his character because he's transferring. The timing, if he leaves right now, that could be a character thing. But the decision to transfer, I'm okay with, because ultimately the young man has 1 year left to play that he knows of. He's probably not, according to the experts, he's probably not going to play in the NFL. So he wants to go somewhere and play that last year. Totally get it. Totally understand it. Both situations are different. Both coaches did the best they could, and both kids appear to be doing what they think is best.